Welcome to Getting Defensive, presented by Gridiron Ratings. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and tonight we talk deep IDP breakouts. I am joined, as always, by my friend, Gridiron Ratings senior IDP analyst. You can find him on Twitter at the IDP Tipster. Gary Van Dyke, how you doing, sir?
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, well, we are so honored to have two amazing guests for tonight. First up, coming to us from the home of the garbage plate, an award-winning analyst from Draft Sharks. You can find him on Twitter at SchaufDS. It's Matt Schauf. How are you, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me on. I got to admit, though, I got a little bit nervous during the intro because I watched a lot of 24 through the years from the start. So that countdown clock, I thought that something really bad was about to happen. So I'm glad that when we got to the end, it was just that.
Our Mission Impossible type approach.
Oh, don't show your age, Gare. I'm with you on that one, though.
Yeah, I remember the black and whites.
My son actually went to the University of Rochester, so I was happy to see that as your home base, Matt.
Nice. My dad's just about to retire from there, actually.
That's amazing.
Nice.
Well, also with us tonight, a brilliant IDP mind who is now with Football Guys, moving on up as part of their revamped and impressive IDP core. You can find him on Twitter at Joey the Tooth IDP. It's Joey Haggan. How you doing, sir?
I'm living the life, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So good to have you. Now, before we jump into tonight's show, please do all of your typical YouTube and podcast things. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. It helps us grow and provide you with the content you are looking for. Well, gentlemen, there's finally some news to talk about before we get to the main topic. So I'm a little tingly inside.
Oh, wow.
John Boyle is reporting that Seattle Seahawks safety Jamal Adams is seeking a second opinion on his hand injury, and there is no timetable for his return. Matt, are we concerned at all about the regular season?
I would say I'm not that concerned because I'm not that interested in Jamal Adams at this point. I don't think Seattle's going to return him to playing tiny defensive end, and if he's not that, he's not really a standout at the position. So I would say if you want to play Jamal Adams, then I would definitely be concerned. Second opinions are rarely a good thing on stuff like this, but use this as a reason to back away from Jamal Adams if you haven't already.
100% agree. I know we talked pre-show about getting defensive, but I think we're all in agreement on that one. Yeah. We are staying away. Well, the New York Jets, speaking of Jets, former Jets, signed former Saint, Buccaneer, and 49er Quan Alexander to a 1-year deal. Now, Joey, outside of CJ Mosley, the New York linebacker cabinet is pretty bare. Does he have a shot to make this roster?
Oh, I definitely think he does. I mean, even in his stint in New Orleans, he wasn't a bad player. He still actually played quite well. He wasn't the standout he was in Tampa Bay, but I still think playing next to CJ Mosley, it's still going to be tough for him to reach that LB1 tier, but I'd still take Quan Alexander as like an LB3. I think he still can get enough volume to play and be in your lineup.
Now, Gary, I know you're a big Quincy Williams fan.
Right.
Are you worried about your shares of Quincy?
I have shares of Quincy.
You have no shares, of course, because I hate Quincy Williams.
I don't think I have any shares of Quincy Williams, but I can't battle. I have no opinion really at all. I'm not overly impressed with either one, and whoever ends up getting that lead job is going to have production by default. So tag them, get them in there, but I'm not making any wild call off at this point. They seem to like Quincy Williams, though. So who knows? I don't know. But
I was going to yell at you for bringing up his name, but I was the one who brought him up.
But making the team should be cheesecake.
In that room, it should be simple. And finally, former Seahawk Carlos Dunlap signed a 1-year deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Gary, at 6'6", 285, is he there to mentor the 6'4", 275-pound rookie?
Are we
George
talking about
Karlaftis?
Are we talking about Carlos Dunlap again? Former Seattle Bear or Cincinnati? No, man. Just like last year when he joined Seattle, I'm telling everybody once again. I'm sorry, but the ship sailed. He lost a step at the end of his Bengals career. It's just he can't hold up under the snaps. Look, just stop it. Sorry.
He had 8 sacks last year.
I still don't care. I really don't. I'm not a believer, and I'm not going to change my mind over taking that chance that he's at his breaking point -8. How many tackles did he have? Where did he end up at the end of the season in overall
I'm still
production?
taking him over Frank Clark, though.
Yeah, Frank Clark. Well, yeah. I mean,
So, I
take
mean,
you.
I don't think. I mean, that rotation there. You have Clark. You have
Which Frank Clark fell
Karlaftis
out about 3
and
years
Dunlop,
ago,
so
but
it's like,
right. Yeah,
who
that's
you really take.
a
Honestly,
great
probably stay away from
comparison.
most, except for Karlaftis if you're in Dynasty, but it's kind of ugly.
All right. Well, enough with this nonsense. Let's get right to the main topic. Gentlemen, tonight we are going to discuss our choices for deep IDP breakouts, hidden redraft, or dynasty gems. Now, before we start, my question to the panel is, how do you define a breakout? Gary and I talked about this last week, so I would like to hear from both Matt and Joey. When you hear the word breakout, Matt, what does that mean to you?
I would say, to me, a breakout can't have done anything big in the past. Big is going to be nebulous. So I guess it's somebody who has to not have finished within the top 24 of their position at least. And then from there, it kind of depends on the size of your league. And then somebody that you expect to do much bigger, like somebody you can be projecting somebody who's been an LB4 level performer, for example. You could say he's going to be LB20 and there's upside into the top 15. To me, that's a breakout candidate. And if you hit either of those levels, I think it counts as breaking out. What you want, of course, is like, this ultimate difference making thing where by the end of the year, people are talking about him.
That makes sense to me. Joey, are you on the same page?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. It's kind of like, it's a guy that you go into the year that a lot of people may be either down on or just don't really know much of. When you're getting this deep, you like to find those people who you think you could either get at the end of a draft or off of waivers, and then they have enough upside to where you can make him a weekly starter. Like that when I'm looking at deep like this, that's what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for somebody who I can turn into a starter from picking up off of waivers.
Okay, so I guess my second question, a follow-up for you, Joey, is then how do you go about identifying who has that breakout potential?
So first, I try to look to see if there's anybody who got a potential boost in volume. So that's the biggest thing, because I mean, we know opportunity is the best ability in the IDP. But from that, I look at the previous year, if you saw any changes in how they graded out, how many snaps they played, where they lined up, if anything changed this year into that year, from last year. So if there's a change in where you line up, if there's a change in volume, if you saw potential of a breakout last year, if you saw like certain things they improve on, it's like, all right, can this be the actual year? Or just somebody's healthy finally.
Right. Health is the main thing. Matt, what do you look for?
Yeah, so I think there's a slight difference between, I guess a standard breakout and a deep breakout. And the thing about a deep breakout is it's not going to be somebody you draft in every league. You have to be drafting and starting a fair number of players for a deep breakout to make sense for stashing on your roster. And I think the deeper you're looking, the deeper your roster is, the less you care about obstacles. You're looking for more like any particular avenue that could propel him well beyond where he's at heading into the season. Whereas if we're looking at a more standard breakout, if you start 5 IDPs in your league, a breakout at that level is somebody that I need to feel pretty good about his chances of breaking out, that I don't see the obstacles and I think that the opportunity is there. And I think he's just going to outproduce what people have seen before better than expected. Here, with the guys we're talking about today, I'm like, this guy, I think there's opportunity. There might not be. He might be somebody I cut in week 3, but if things break right for him, he could absolutely, shoot off like a rocket.
Nice waiver wire guys too.
Right.
Absolutely. And for everybody out there listening, understand when we're talking about these deep IDP breakouts, we're talking about deep leagues, right? This isn't for your sleeper start 3 leagues. Like this is more your deep true position, right? Breaking out DT specific. This is a little more in depth. So Matt, why don't you just kick us off with your first player?
Yeah, so if you're playing, let's say 8+ total defensive players, I think this is a guy who should get drafted in those leagues. If you play as few as 5, maybe he's a consideration at the end of drafts, but he's at least somebody to keep an eye on for waiver wire purposes and maybe pick up in those leagues as well. Because I think Jonas Griffith, the linebacker for the Broncos, has a shot to be relevant in pretty much all formats by the end of the year if things go right for him. What is going for him and what made me want to like him coming out of last season is down at the end of the schedule last year, he did step into the starting lineup because they had every linebacker who wore a Broncos jersey get hurt at some point last year. So over the final 4 games, Jonas Griffith became a starter. And I got to be honest, at that point, I was like, who is Jonas Griffith? And so I looked him up, and it turns out Jonas Griffith is this big dude who can run and was a stud at Indiana State, 6'4", 250, ran a 4.6 240 at his pro day. So even if you tack on the pro day penalty to the 40 time, he's still in the top quartile in speed score among linebackers. So he's fast for his size, above average in the rest of the testing, and productive in college. Topped 100 tackles in 3 straight years at Indiana State, led that conference in tackles twice, had 14 career sacks, 28.5 tackles for loss, went to the Niners as an undrafted free agent, did nothing there, kind of moved on and off that practice squad. Eventually, Denver traded for him. So it's not somebody they just picked up off the street. They gave something for him. I don't remember what it was, nothing huge, but they went out and got him. He played well last year, and we had Mike Kliss from 9 News on the Draft Sharks podcast a week or 2 ago. And I asked him specifically about Jonas Griffith because I was hoping, for somebody to give me more of a reason to believe. I said, is there a chance that Jonas Griffith starts this year? And he's like, not only is there a chance he starts, I think he's going to be the 3-down guy there. I think he can play in coverage. I really like what he's got going on. And apparently he is the Jonas Griffith guy among the Denver beat writers. So I was like, thank you very much. I'm sold. Now I'm just going to draft him and we'll see what happens.
Nice.
I'm not going to lie. After previewing your list, I have sent out a few offers in my deeper leagues for some of these players, but no luck so far on Jonas Griffith. So yeah. I'm still hoping. Gentlemen, Joey, Gary, any thoughts on Jonas?
Oh, I agree fully. I actually picked him up at the end of last season, and he was on 2 of my championship rosters. So I'm a full bore Jonas Griffith guy myself.
Yeah, graded out well in PFF. Yeah, I was impressed with him down the stretch. Gary, did you?
Oh, no. Yeah, I was looking at the camp reports. It's make perfect sense that he's in there right now taking his first team reps. So I think Josie Jules coming off that injury. I mean, he had a little streak going towards the end there right before he got injured, and he looked pretty good. But, I mean, yeah, you got to give it. Between the two, you got to go hands down with Griffith.
Yeah, Jules an efficient tackler, but
yeah,
I mean, I think he's kind of
not a great
lacks in athleticism and
not a great 3-down guy.
The thing that made me hesitant a little bit on Jonas Griffith through the offseason was Denver did extend Josie Jewell. They brought him back. Right. So I was like, oh, I guess they like him better than I thought.
But
so
it was on the cheap, wasn't it?
Say that again?
It was on the cheap.
I think 2-year 11 or something like that. 2-year 13.
Decent size. But so that, that made me think that they liked him better than what they had and that he was a good bet for 3-down duty. But right. I was glad to hear, that's why I was glad to hear a beat writer say, no, I think Jonas Griffith is the best they got. And I was like, I can start out with Josie Jewell, even maybe projected a little bit ahead of Jonas Griffith, but I'm going to make sure, even if I have to skip over Josie Jewell in my rankings and take Jonas Griffith, I'm going to take the ceiling guy and see what happens.
All right. Jonas Griffith kicking it up with a bang. I love that. Joey, who is your first player?
All right, safety Jaylinn Hawkins from the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay,
he's the Atlanta Falcons. They're kind of at this crossroads as a team. They're kind of in a rebuild mode. If you look at their safety core, it's pretty barren. I mean, they have Richie Grant, who had trouble actually breaking into the starting lineup last year. You have Eric Harris, who's 32 years old, and then you have Jaylinn Hawkins, who didn't play much last year, but he still ended up playing 49% of the team snaps. He brings better playmaking side than Harris. Harris started 12 games, and in 11 of those 12, the 12th game he got injured. He played 86% of snaps or more in every single game. Didn't come up with a single interception. He did have 5.25 tackles per game, but Hawkins came up. He played 49% of snaps in 14 games, had 2 interceptions. He played 28% of his snaps in the box. And he graded out positive as a pass rusher, and he was at least average in run defense. So Richie Grant's probably going to be the guy who's going to be a coverage guy. He's going to be on the back end. So they're looking for that guy who's going to be their box safety. I don't think, I mean, Hawkins is, why not give him a shot? With the team you have right now, what's the point of putting out a 32-year-old Eric Harris? So you have his age matched with the team's building and Eric Harris being old and decent production last year with minimal playtime.
Jaylinn Hawkins. So let me ask you, if you were in a rookie draft and you wanted to go after a Jaylinn Hawkins, what level pick would you be willing to offer?
Not much. That's 6 if I'm going to offer a pick. Otherwise, I'll just grabbing him off of waivers because he's probably on waivers on most wires. So,
okay. Gary, any thoughts on Jaylinn Hawkins?
Nah, I agree. They don't want Eric Harris out there if they don't have to. I mean, the guy's had a decent career. I think he was like 26 or something when he came into the league. He was old. So, and he got hooked on there with the Raiders and Gruden liked him. So he got the job. But, overall, you don't want him. So you might as well go ahead and let the young guy have a shot. And right now, that's who's running with the first team.
Yeah, with Mariota and Ritter at quarterback, I don't think they're going to be competing for much. So might as well go for the young people and see what the young guy can do back there. Gary, who is your first player?
Let's see, Camryn Bynum for the Vikings. I was actually really high on him last year when he had his little spurt for Harrison Smith. He stepped in nicely for a contest and a half. He's actually a former cornerback in college. I think it was California, possibly. But he's really good in coverage. He also showed that he ain't afraid to tackle, and he did really well in that little section we got to see. But the only problem was I kind of backed off of him in January or February. I can't remember. It was a little bit right before the draft, and kind of glad I did because they got Sin in there. So right now, reportedly, blah blah. It's this whole reportedly thing, folks. When I say something like that, I'm going to mention it, but take that shit with a grain of salt. For the simple fact is that it's the start of training camp, so a lot of this stuff will flop. A lot of it'll stick. A lot of it'll flop. They're giving guys their shots. Some guys are banged up. It doesn't really matter. But just so we get that off our chest. So is he going to start the year as the starting free safety? I don't know. But what I'm convinced is that he will have a role. It's going to involve about 70 or 80% of the snaps. I think he's going to see a lot of the slot. I think he's going to be the third safety. And I think in those third safety sets, we might actually see him as the free safety with Sin coming up and helping up with Smith. I just don't see this kid as a talent. And he really, they think that they really hit gold with him. And I can see why. I think he's actually got another year's worth of growth in him. And I think he's going to be one of these guys that we're going to be able to look at, like some of these other slot guys that you could consistently count on to have good, decent DB2 seasons for you. So, but he didn't record enough stats last year, so he's definitely a breakup. And that whole conversation earlier, man, I've started using two phrases. There's breakout, and then because of some of what I see out here, there's the breakup. So I think that you can have a breakup player where you have a tier guy. He's been a low tier 2. He can make it up half a tier or something. I hate using that term, but I've been trying to actually relate a little bit more to what some other people might think, as in a breakout or a breakup. So at least I have a definition for it and saying no, because the definition that Matt had at the beginning, dude, I had something very similar to that. That was the footer and the header on a lot of my pages just last year and in all my articles. It's how my articles ended. That is key and on the whole. I like that. I enjoyed hearing that because me and you have not talked that much about IDP. Actually, we've actually just been friendly chat more than anything, I believe.
So Matt, where are you on Cam Bynum?
First of all, I thought Gary was about to start naming top breakups, and I thought we were going to turn this into a Taylor Swift pod. So I was glad to hear things take a left turn there. Camryn Bynum's interesting, and I think he's a good example of that deep breakout kind of thing. He flashed for a couple weeks last year where he got opportunity, and then of course they did take Lewis Seen early in the draft. So the immediate thought is, well, that blocks Camryn Bynum from coming through. But that's the kind of guy you stash in a dynasty league right now, or you watch for waiver purposes, or you grab at the very end of a deep draft. And then if he doesn't have a starting role at the beginning of the season, you drop him for something else. And if he does, you're like, hey, I got him, and you guys didn't.
Yep.
Yeah, Joey, Football Guys has him listed as a cornerback. Do you know something we don't know?
I think it's just kind of they try to take the bulk of where he's going to where he played most of his snaps. I think he did play a lot of slot last year, but no, it's just kind of where they find the majority of where he's listed on sites and whatnot. So,
well, hopefully, if he is, that would be a great corner start.
But yeah, like Gary said, though, if he plays a lot of slot corner, I mean, you look at the secondary for Minnesota last year; it was kind of trash. So they probably. They get Lewis Seen in, they have him, Harrison Smith, Bynum now all well. They've drafted Andrew Booth. So all of a sudden you have a decent core of players. If you can get them all on the field at the same time, it's definitely worth the shot.
All right, Matt, let's go to the second round. Who is your second player?
Second one I got is somebody that's far less exciting as a player, but that is kind of what makes him more of a sleeper. He's not fast. He's Zach Allen for the Cardinals, but he's that hardworking guy up front. He's, listed as a defensive end. He's really more of an interior lineman, and those lines can be blurred depending on your format. But I don't think we've seen full Zach Allen in the pros yet. He was drafted at the top of round 3 in 2019. He's dealt with multiple injuries, including last year, had his ankle shredded. He said it was basically floating, being held together by tape by the end of the year, had surgery on it, but he's recovered from that surgery. It sounds like he's even healthier than he was at the beginning of last year, was not on the PUP list to start camp. So it doesn't seem like that's a concern going forward. So then we can look back at the production from when he was in college. 10 plus tackles for loss in each of his final 3 college seasons. So each college year where he played starter level snaps, he was in double digits in tackles for loss, despite not being a big sack guy. 15 plus tackles for loss each of the final 2 seasons. He had totaled 14 passes defensed. He had a 100 tackle season as a junior, as a defensive lineman. Now, some of that's fluky, but again, we're talking about a guy who every year was making plays in the backfield. So the whole point of singling out those tackles for loss is, even if they don't count separately in your scoring system, that's a better signal of a guy that's making the play for himself rather than standing somewhere and catching players coming to him to make those tackles. So I like what's there. I don't think we're ever going to get the big sack numbers, but if we've got Zach Allen getting into the backfield, maybe we sneak an 8 sack season in there, 9, maybe 10 at some point now that we're at 17 games. But really what we're looking for here is tackles, the other peripheral stats, and then maybe we get lucky somewhere.
Yeah, I love Zach Allen. I love Zach Allen, especially because true position is pushing him, like you said, to the IDL. I mean, as a defensive end, he's middling, but as a defensive tackle, I mean, he put up 48 tackles last year. Mm-hmm. Like, that's pretty solid for an interior rusher, right, Joey?
Yeah, definitely. If he's set up as an IDL, then Zach he moves up to probably tier 2. I mean, plus he's learning from JJ Watt. He's got a pretty good mentor of a guy, and a guy who's always willing. He seems willing to teach all the guys on his team. So, I mean, Zach Allen, yeah, definitely. And like you said, his college production was unreal, and I love his hands at the line. You brought up his passes defended. I love watching how active he is at the line. He's got a big wingspan he uses, and yeah, he racks up tackle numbers. Like you said, 48 tackles last year. That's great, especially if he's at IDL.
Yeah, love to see that there. Gary, any thoughts on the big guy in Arizona?
Oh, yeah, I love him. I've been tracking him for the last couple of years in the start-sit charts, because when he does get on his spurts and he's actually hitting it, and the matchup's right, he's actually one of those few guys, kind of waiver wires in these deeper formats. It's like the IDP incentive that you're a part of now, JJ, 16 team with 34 roster spots. And Zach Allen was actually on the waiver wire at points over the last couple of years because of those spurts where he's either hurt or just had a few weeks off. I think we start 11 in there, if I remember right. But either way, I love him because he was actually able when he was rolling and he was healthy and the matchup was right. He actually overachieved. It's hard enough for a lot of those guys to even just match what they should get. So I like Zach Allen, and yeah, in this deeper, we're throwing those Hail Marys for these IDPs. There's nothing but upside for him.
Yeah, and I started out calling him an unexciting athlete, but I wanted to just wrap that up by pointing out that if you look at his mock draftable page, and that shows the history of performances at the scouting combine, his top matches are Gerald McCoy, Camryn Hayward, Nick Fairley. So if you look at him as a defensive end, he's going to look like a slow guy who has to work hard. But if you look at him as 3-4 DN or defensive interior player, however you define it, he actually stacks up with those guys who are all first round picks. Right. So there's more to like on the athletic front. I don't want to leave this with Zach Allen thinking I'm putting him down.
Oh, sorry, Zach.
Well, I don't think you will. Football Guys has him projected as the defensive end 30.
Hold on, I'll call it.
He's the defensive tackle number 14. So yeah, definitely throw a chip in there. Joey, who is your second player?
Malik Hooker. He's kind of a safety. What was he? 5 years ago out of Ohio State.
Yep.
I think he was a former first round pick. I mean, he has tremendous playmaking upside. Never has been able to stay healthy. I think he played 16 games, maybe 1 year in his career. But he always carries that huge playmaking upside. And I was kind of started tracking his role last year with the Cowboys because he signed on with the Cowboys. He made 44 tackles in just 44% of the team's snaps. So if you up that to like 100% snap share, that's 6.25 tackles per game. That's something we never really projected from Malik Hooker was a tackle guy. So I looked a little deeper. He played 31% of his snaps in the box for Dallas, and he had a 75.8 PFF run defense grade and a 65.5 coverage grade still. So he's seemingly healthy. His box snaps have been boosted up a little bit. His tackle grading is great. So, I mean, considering he's now the starting safety in Dallas, like it's him and Jaylinn Curse. I wouldn't be surprised to finally see Malik Hooker relevant in IDP. And I mean, if he can stay healthy for a full 16 games, I mean, who knows? You see the playmaking upside boost along with solid tackle numbers. I mean, he could surprise some people this year.
Gary, where are you on Hooker?
Not on my roster. I'm a Ohio State fan. Love Ohio State. I'm sorry. It's fun, folks. It's called getting defensive. So I'm just not buying it. He's never impressed me enough. He might be really skilled, talented, and capable, but at this point, I'd rather watch it happen on your roster. But either way, these are deep dives, right? So what kind of a ceiling are we looking at? So somebody in what are you projecting? What do you think that his best ceiling as the free safety in Dan Quinn's system?
I could probably see 65 tackles, but then you add in his playmaking upside. You could see upwards to about 10 passes defended. And if he can get back to his interception ways, add another 2-3 interceptions. I mean, for a guy who you can go pick up off of waivers, I would say it's worth it.
Oh yeah, it definitely puts a nice value on him in a 9 starting roster or something, starting lineup, something like that. Yep, I can see it.
Matt, which side do you fall on?
What I like about Hooker most is that at this position, I would rather, we'll talk about somebody else at the other end of the safety pool, but at safety in general and cornerback even more so, I would rather wait until the end of the draft and then grab a few guys and see what happens. Right. And it's not so much that I'm sure Malik Hooker is going to be the guy, but he certainly could be. He has that path, as Joey laid out, to more tackles. And, his lone starting season at Ohio State grabbed 7 picks. So I guess we have to look at that as the potential ceiling. And that's what can pop up at DB and be this out of nowhere guy. And all of a sudden he has this magical season.
Well, that's always the issue with safeties, is that so few repeat from year to year. I mean, we started off the podcast talking about Jamal Adams, right? Jamal Adams was going to be the safety one forever.
Yeah. Hey, we just got done talking about me and Johnny on IDP Pro Pod last night with Jamal Adams, because I had him in the second tier for in shallow standard leagues. He was actually like 5th, 6th DB, maybe something like that. I had him after Xavier Woods and Chin. I know that because I have him in these little squads. But either way, yeah, we've been falling out of love. Of course, we weren't one of those guys that kind of bought into that. He's going to be a superstar in Seattle. He had already peaked. You can't expect a guy to peak any more than he had already peaked before he got there. So why are you calling a guy going to break out even more? And the odds were actually against him to keep from repeating. And he had the injury history. So where was I leading to that?
I don't know, but the Jets got 2 firsts for him.
Oh,
so.
You know what it was? I was jealous. I didn't get to talk about Jamal Adams earlier. I apologize. I got that off my chest.
It's okay. I'm glad we're here for you.
Yes.
Well, since you're speaking, why don't you talk about your second pick?
Let's see. Troy Reader. The guy keeps landing on his feet. Considering the draft stock, the average play, actually probably below average play. The unfortunate part for Kenneth Murray, who's right now nursing an ankle injury, the only guy that had a worse score than Troy Reader was him. And there was really poor, and you can see it. He's not worked out for them. Murray has not worked out for his draft stock. He's been benched. He's been moved around. Kaiser White sent him packing pretty much for the most part, from what I understand. I'm a Drew Tranquil fan, but I think he's a little bit higher up on a breakup. I guess we could call it, but either way, I really think that Troy Reader could end up being a 2-down thumper in the end. I don't think we're looking at a 3-down guy. I think that's going to end up being Tranquil, as long as Tranquil can stay healthy. But I think that the team is probably bored and ready to move on from Kenneth Murray. So I think that this is a good opportunity for Reader to step in and absorb some more production like he has in the past when he was with the Rams.
Matt, any love for Reader?
I wouldn't say love. I would say I can see the possibility. I think the guy I'm watching to see what happens is Kyle Van Noy, because there was some talk of him playing off-ball linebacker with the Chargers. I think there's a little bit more 3-down upside to Kyle Van Noy because he can play coming forward. He could, play in coverage if it's between him and Troy Reader. And the current coaching staff is not the one that drafted Kenneth Murray. So if he continues to be what he has been so far, I think they are less likely to give him another shot than even the previous regime would have.
All right, Joey. So like I said before, I have been sending out offers based on this list. So I sent out in a 96 team league. We're in our rookie draft. So I sent out pick 690. It's a 6 copy league. So literally like the end of the 6th round for Reader. And I got him. Now I don't have a lot of starting linebacker. I'm a little shallow there. Worthy of the pick, or did I waste it?
No, I think it's worthy. I mean, like Gary said, there's not really much there in the Chargers linebacker group. I mean, it's Drew Tranquil is going to be the guy who's going to be the 3-down guy most likely. But Reader, you see him with the Rams every time he got an opportunity, even to play like 50, 60%, he was just an efficient tackler. He just racked up tacklers. Did he do much else? No. Was he good in coverage? No. But they don't need him to be. They need him to be in there for 2 downs, soak up as many tackles as he can, and then
don't screw up. Don't screw up. And he can actually probably run the defense. What do you think, Joey? Because I think that was what their big downfall was for Murray overall.
I wouldn't be surprised if they started running it through Derwin, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
he's the best defender on the team, and he needs to move up more. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I think they drafted another safety in this draft, and they still have Nasir Adderley. I wouldn't be surprised if they ran a lot more 3 safety and just kept Tranquil on as the lone linebacker.
Yeah, I like that, Matt, with Van Noy. That guy's got some longevity, right? That would be so interesting because the way it could really end up is just Van Noy and Troy Reader all year. Tranquil has to stay healthy, and well, so's the other guy. So that would be real interesting. Because there's two waiver wires.
Random stat for Reader: 6 passes defensed. I don't know if that's by luck, if they hit him in the head, but for
Probably
somebody
not-
who's
2 of them.
as bad in coverage,
Yeah,
that's not bad. I'll
He
take
targeted
that.
a lot.
got his hand there.
All right, Matt. Final round. Who is your player?
I think you could argue that either of my first 2 picks were not truly deep, and it depends on the size of your league, and maybe I agree with you, and maybe I'd argue against it. This guy is deep, no matter how low you're going in redraft, I think, and that's because he is a 6th round rookie. He is Malcolm Rodriguez for the Detroit Lions, and this is what I'm talking about with a deep breakout, because it's entirely possible he does not start a single game for the Lions this year. But what I like about him is that he's heading into this linebacker core where absolutely nobody is guaranteed a starting spot. And their linebackers coach, Kelvin Shepard, even said that ahead of camp. He's like, nobody here is guaranteed a spot. Alex Anzalone is the one who has played the most, but that doesn't mean he's guaranteed anything. They re-signed him. I think they would like it if other guys beat out Alex Anzalone, because he's never done anything special. He's just a guy who's okay, and he can be the insurance option there. It sounded like Shepard, from what I read, likes Chris Board, who's a veteran who's bounced around some and is there and could start. It sounds like they want Derek Barnes to turn into a long-term answer at linebacker. We'll see. He was definitely up and down and more down last year as a rookie, but it's, to be expected because he played a lot of edge in college, then moved to off-ball linebacker right before he finished college. So he's still fairly new to what they're asking him to do. So maybe the upside's there. Maybe he ends up being the answer. Malcolm Rodriguez, though, looks to me like the kind of player that in a couple years, everybody's like, why didn't we know more about him heading into the league? It seems to me like the only reason that he lasted until day 3 is because he's short. He's 5'11". He's 232 pounds, though. That's not that small for a linebacker now. All you have to do is come in at that size and tell them that you used to play safety. And they're like, oh, all right, you're a new age linebacker. Now we like you.
Right.
Here's what he has going for him. 7th best speed score in this linebacker class, 90th percentile speed score for the position. Going back to high school, Malcolm Rodriguez was the quarterback for a 3-time California state champ. He was the state defensive player of the year as a senior. He was a state champion wrestler. So a guy that's just good at everything whenever he goes out there. Started as a sophomore at Oklahoma State. 10 passes defensed over the past 3 years in college, 11 forced fumbles, 16 tackles for loss in just his final season, and also graded out 21st, according to PFF, among linebackers in coverage. That's across 449 linebackers. So very good in coverage. Kelvin Shepard has already said he thinks that Malcolm Rodriguez could become a 3-down guy, a green dot guy who calls the defense. And to me, when you're talking about a whole linebacker core where everybody's like, maybe this guy's speed could work out. Maybe this guy will become what we want him to. If the new guy comes in and the only knock on him is that he's a little bit shorter than you want and he's brand new, I'm going to go ahead and bet on him now and think that he could be leading that defense before this year's over.
It seems like the safest chip to put on any player. I love his tenacity. Joey, where are you on Malcolm Rodriguez?
Kind of the same deal. It's like he's a guy just draft late, take him like the last round of your rookie draft and just see how it pans out. I mean, the main thing he has going for him in that linebacker group is he's really the only one that can cover. I mean, Alex Anzalone, he's been pedestrian at best. Derek Barnes was terrible last year in coverage. And I mean, that's something that he thrives in. So it's like if everybody else at that position group's terrible in coverage, that's something that's going to at least get you on the field for 3rd downs. And if you can make sure you're available 1st and 2nd down and you've outplayed everybody else, that's going to get you, like he said, a 3-down role. And if they're saying he can call the defense, that means that the coaching staff already likes him. And that coaching staff shows like they have people that buy into their system and that new Lions coaching staff. And if they believe in this guy to run their defense, that means they really like him.
All right. Well, I'm hoping he shows up. Gary, I don't believe we're super high on Rodriguez, but has this changed your mind?
No, actually, he wasn't on my radar at all until I believe it was our founding GR father, Jeff DeMotto. I'm going to hack it up. Jeff. Hey, Jeff, how you doing out there? You want the ones watch? I can't remember.
Di Matteo.
Yeah, there it was. So, anyways, I believe he was actually the first one to really put him on my radar. But
Mhm.
I'm not a
Jeff's
big
a big
rookie guy
fan.
to begin with. So, but yeah, as the process went on, he definitely he moved up in our boards, and I know who he is. And the matter of fact of there's no competition there. It should be a wide open. And I feel bad for Derek Barnes because we talked about Anslin all last year, and then Derek Barnes, my thoughts on him. I wasn't believing the hype that was coming out. I think it was a lot of pressure put on that kid to overperform and overachieve the first year. And it wasn't put on there by his natural draft status or the coaches or anybody, but the fans and the pressure around him. I mean, I kind of didn't understand that last year when there was a lot of that for him. It's hard enough for these guys that are like studs to overachieve their rookie seasons. Not to think that this kid here is going to come in and take the reins. He just not ready. So I like the odds of Rodriguez, right? All right. Yeah, I like his odds. I mean, there's no reason in like everything else has been covered. Everybody else is average.
All right. Well, Matt, final follow-up on him. In what round of I know this is a tough question. If you're looking at a rookie draft, you're in a dynasty league. How deep does the draft have to go before you're taking Rodriguez? Say it starts 3 linebackers.
We had a rookie draft in one that starts, it starts, I think, 11 total defensive starters. So I believe I took him in round 5. And I think that ended up being a little bit earlier even than he was in my personal rankings. But it's down at the level where you're like, I really want this guy. I don't care if I miss out on somebody who's a little bit ahead of him, because I tried in ranking him to not get myself too excited and to realize it is a 6th round pick. Maybe it's not just that he's short. Maybe the entire league was like, he's just not going to be it at the pro level. But I think round 5 of a rookie draft is certainly late enough for me to be wrong if I'm going to be wrong, like I apparently was on Kenny Willekes a couple years ago. Similar guy that I loved coming out of college and was a late pick and hasn't turned out. But I mean, this one, like sometimes you get somebody that the profile looks good, then you watch the tape and you're like, I guess we'll see. But you watch Malcolm Rodriguez's tape too, and it's like, what do people not like about this guy? So I'm cautiously all in. I'm all in at a sensible level.
Okay, I can take that. I only do this pod. If you're listening, everybody put earmuffs on. I only do this pod for IDP advice for my own leagues, just so you know. Like, that's the main reason you are all here, is to help me win. So I appreciate that, and I'm going to throw a pick at him. Joey, who is next up on your list?
Rookie Dane Belton, safety out of Iowa.
Okay.
He's a 4th round pick with the New York Giants. Jabril Peppers is gone. He's long gone. I mean, that experiment was long over before he left. They don't really have a true strong safety on the Giants roster. I mean, they have Dane Belton, they have Xavier McKinney, and they have Julian Love. So Julian Love moves all over the formation. So last year he played 32% of his snaps in the slot, 23% in the box, 30% at free safety, 9% at the defensive line, and 6% out wide. So he pretty much goes wherever he's needed to per situation. Xavier McKinney, he played great in the last line of defense. He played 71% of his 1,100 snaps at free safety. So now they have Julian Love, who's moving all around the formation. They have Xavier McKinney, who's playing deep. They still have an opening at strong safety, and the next man up is Dane Belton. He had 5 interceptions his senior year in Iowa. He didn't put up gaudy tackle numbers, but the guy shows he can play. He showed he can play. He's a 4th round pick. They draft him in the 4th round. And there's really nobody else in front of him. So if they really stay true to moving Julian Love around, Dane Belton could be a guy who could step in and be an 80% snap guy.
Interesting. Gary, any thoughts on Dane? I know you're not big on rookies.
Oh, I am in this situation because Julian Love should not be a starter this year. I actually like them signing Adam Andrews back on too. He was a former Giant, went to the Bucks. That just happened. The rest of this, I'm not in love with this. Well, there's nothing to be in love with the rest of the roster except for McKinney. But I have no problem thinking that Dan Belton is going to be a starter at all. He probably should be a starter. This is another. I like this call a lot. It kind of stood out to me. I'd seen a little bit about him. There's another kid from Washington and like their free safety or something. There was like two I was looking into, and I remember thinking that they should probably sign a free agent, and they never did.
Matt, where do you think he's going to be lined up more? A safety or a slot corner?
I think we're kind of waiting to sort that out. The Giants, I think we're going to see the Giants change quite a bit between this year and next year because they didn't have any money left under the cap. They probably wanted more things than they did this offseason. So, I mean, that helps a guy like Belton who's coming in this year to have more opportunity ahead of him. And I mean, whatever he proves he can do, they'll be willing to put him out there. I think it helps to bet on safeties behind a questionable linebacking core too. And Blake Martinez coming off the ACL tear only makes the Giants group a little bit more questionable.
Xavier McKinney.
Oh yeah.
Xavier McKinney. Oh man, he's going to feast. The guy played all over the field in Alabama. We were talking about him last night too. I'm excited. I've sat on some shares. It's going to be real interesting. There should be plenty of production out there. It's just a question who gets it. And if I'm throwing a dart, I'd rather throw the dart on the rookie than I would Jordan Love.
Fair enough. Well, Gary, you're talking. Keep talking. Who is your final player?
Man, I remember right after this guy actually signed with Atlanta, Lorenzo Carter, 4-year guy for the Giants. Man, he come in as a kind of a high-end athlete, maybe considered a little bit of a reach by the Giants at the time, but they threw him into the fire a little bit. He never really accomplished all that much. Here's the funny thing. Well, besides being a little bit injury prone, what's wild is he's a outside linebacker rusher, but he's better in coverage than he is in pass rushing. So he always played the strong side, and it seemed like he was always going out in coverage more than anything. And you were seeing guys over the years like Marcus Golden when he was there, or Fackrell or whatever that guy's name was. It seemed like that somebody else was always going to be that primary weak side line rusher. So, the guy has been how do you say crap in stats for his career in overall for being into the Giants? But I like it in Dean P's scheme. They have plans for him to be their primary rusher. He's going to just basically be put to the test. He's fast. He's actually, I don't know, is it a possibility that the Giants just worked it always to his favor and thought they had better pass rushers? Was it just how they did it? I want to see what he's got. Again, these are deep throws. These are deep guys. So this is definitely a guy. If you say you got something like 45 people on your bench, you say you got that really deep bench, still don't get him. He'll be on the waiver wire.
Matt, now I know the Atlanta pass rushing room is formidable, but that was a joke. Obviously, they don't really have anybody. Do you have any hopes for Lorenzo Carter this year?
I would consider him more of a why not player than a guy I have hope for. He was a speed winner coming in, but it never really turned into big production in college. He topped out at 5 sacks. He never reached 10 tackles for loss. It was a 3rd-round pick, so came in early enough that he got opportunity, and now he's getting another opportunity. But it is a 1-year deal, minimum money, so it's kind of like, all right, we're going to give you a shot and see if there is anything there. I don't know. I'm not expecting a whole lot, but like I said, it's a why not choice, and that's where Gary's talking about picking him up. And there's opportunity, as you just alluded to, with that Atlanta pass rushing group. I think I have a good shot at finishing top 5 in sacks on that team this year.
I almost guarantee you will. Joey, were you hoping that Gary went with Devon Kennard, or do you have some Lorenzo Carter love?
I have a couple of shares of Lorenzo Carter, kind of just sitting on the end of my bench, but I do worry he's just going to come in and be the next Fowler again, just like Fowler was last year for the Falcons. Like the Falcons seem to when they go into free agency, they don't put enough emphasis on finding a true edge rusher. They just keep finding these guys. Well, maybe he has the potential to break out, or maybe he can keep it going. I mean, Fowler had the one good year in Los Angeles, Los Angeles then. But I mean, Carter's not really all that exciting. I'm actually more interested in Ebiketie, the rookie, but
out of Penn State, right?
yeah.
But he's probably less of a flyer.
Right. Yeah, Lorenzo Carter, I mean, he's got opportunity, and if he can put it all together, I mean, it's definitely worth a flyer just to throw on the end of your bench.
And yeah, and the size of a league's at 9, 10, 11, starting like we have an IDP incentive. I mean, realistically, he can break all the way up to actually being maybe a depth guy in a bye week injury. I don't see the guy ever hitting double digits. I think what's the average? The 5. So at best, we see an improvement of maybe 8 sacks, 55 tackles if we're lucky. I don't know if he can last. We'll see. But
yeah,
it's
Atlanta,
a dark throw.
As a Jets fan, I know Atlanta's pain because neither of us have had a pass rusher since John Abraham. So it's been a minute. I'm hoping somebody can show up in Atlanta.
Well, one other guy to keep an eye on there, if we're talking about Atlanta, is D'Angelo Malone. And Ebiketie is the bigger name rookie, but Malone is an exciting guy speed-wise, and he put up big production in college, 20.5, 10.5, 17.5 tackles for loss over his final 3 seasons. Just the 1 year above 8 sacks, but those tackles for loss, that speed off the edge, can then convert into sacks to the next level. He came in about 240, I think. So he might be the kind of guy that needs a little bit of time to add some mass for the NFL, but especially if you're in a format that doesn't just treat him like a linebacker and does treat him like an edge player, that could be somebody that we're talking about within a couple years.
Yeah. We were talking about, he's out of Western Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
And that was the pick they traded for got for Matt Ryan. They got D'Angelo Malone. We were talking about him a little bit after the Senior Bowl. And yeah, I'm hoping. I always hope kids show up. It makes you feel good on the inside, but because sometimes makes you feel a little bit better. It's how we're going to end this pod. Who is the one player in IDP that you are absolutely avoiding? You don't care what Gary Van Dyke is saying. You don't care what anybody else is saying. You're like, no, I am all out. Matt?
I haven't done enough drafts so far to know for sure who's going early enough that I'm going to say, no, that's a mistake. So I guess one player who was in the spotlight last year, who will definitely be on 0 of my teams this year, is Trevon Diggs. And he's somebody I actually bought last year because I liked the opportunity. I liked the playmaking potential to him, and he was not expensive because he hadn't done it yet. Now he has done it and done it quite well. Grabbed a ton of interceptions last year. And as all of us sitting here know, that is absolutely not a stat that you can count on a guy repeating year to year. In fact, you can generally count on that not repeating year to year and usually reversing. So it actually reversed for Diggs before last year ended. He was amazing in the first half, and the second half, he was not even somebody that you want to keep on your bench. So my only mistake with Diggs last year was not trying to trade him off a little harder before the stats fell off, but he's somebody that's down. I'm not even sure where he is in my DB rankings at the moment, probably in the 50s or the 60s. And I keep waiting for somebody to be like, dude, why do you have Trevon Diggs down there so low? Do you have any idea what he did last year? Haven't heard it yet, but I'm prepared for that email when it comes in.
Yeah, people are very high on Trevon Diggs, and I'm with you 100%. Joey, who's your player?
I might catch a little bit of flack for this, but it's actually Shaq Thompson. I'm not a big Shaq Thompson guy. I never really have been. I mean, he came into the league and he was kind of like that tweener player. He was a safety, running back, and linebacker when he was in college. And he came in and he actually showed to be a better pass rusher when he first came in. I thought he was like a good blitzer and whatnot. But when Luke Kuechly retired, he was supposed to be the guy that came in and was just pick right up where Kuechly left off. Obviously not, because he's an all-pro talent. Like, Kuechly is unbelievable. But Shaq Thompson never really elevated his game to any other level. I don't think he's ever eclipsed 114 tackles. And if you're talking about him to be your back-end LB1 or your LB2, I'm still worried about it. especially when they go in and grab Corey Littleton. Don't get me wrong. His last few seasons in Las Vegas were absolutely terrible. Like, it was inefficient tackling. He looked lost in the field. But I think coming back to Carolina, I think they can play to his strengths. I mean, you look at his in 2018 and 2019 in LA, he averaged 130 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 2.5 interceptions. I think it was 7 passes defended over those 2 seasons. He was a top 5 linebacker for 2 straight seasons. It's not really a fluke. I mean, obviously he has the potential to be a guy, so he might actually come and take the LB1 role in Carolina because Shaq Thompson can't seem to elevate his game to that level. So Shaq Thompson, people are taking him as like a high-end LB2, and I'm just letting them take him. I'll take Corey Littleton as my LB4.
Gary, do you have a player?
Carlos Dunlap.
You're avoiding him at all costs? That won't be hard.
That was a few years ago. And hey, I'm not going to say Terrell Peppers this year because, hey, the word's been out for a little bit. But when Logan Ryan, I'm going to pick on another Giant. He's not going to produce like that down there. As a true deep free safety like Jordan Whitehead played, you're going to see about the same kind of production. Even when Jordan Whitehead was really on his rolls, it was never one of those paces where he was going to be a top DB1. And Logan Ryan has been absorbing some production for the last couple of years in that Giants defense. And I'm not buying. Plus he's old, so it's kind of easy to, that defensive pool is pretty big when it comes to the DBs to begin with.
Easy on the old comments, sir.
It always makes me smile when we sit around with our back pain and ear hair and talk about how old these football players are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're preaching to the choir, brother.
All right, gentlemen. Well, it is now time for tags. You're going to let everybody know where they can find you. Any final thoughts and anything that you are working on? Matt.
DraftSharks.com. You can find all my stuff. Draft Sharks War Room is there. It syncs with your commissioner sites to give you picks throughout. That includes IDPs. We can support those. You'll get my rankings there. We'll help guide you through the draft and match your format. The podcast is on, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you want to find it on the website. So not a whole lot of IDP I talk there because my co-host would fall asleep, I think, but every once in a while I sneak in an IDP show. We are talking to a lot of beat writers coming up though. So exciting times on there. And I appreciate very much you guys having me on here.
It was our pleasure. Joey.
All right. You can find all my work at footballguys.com. I do writing, rankings, and projections there. We have projections going out that we do a 3-tier thing. You have your high end, your mid, and your low end. And we have a setup for how many years we actually think they're going to go keep it consistent for. And it goes into our draft dominator. So you can actually change your draft dominator to win now mode, or you can change it to for the future, and it'll adjust the rankings to help you with your draft. So that was a pretty cool thing. When they signed me on, they asked if I wanted to be a part of that. So that was pretty awesome. So
nice.
That just went live, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Huge congratulations, by the way. I can't tell you enough.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Well-deserved promotion there.
One of the first guys I knew.
Yeah.
But
my pleasure.
Yeah. Other than that, the one thing I do want to plug is I actually just became a published author as well. I just put out my first book, and a sequel is actually in the works. Yeah, I decided to write a book the other day. So quick little thing here. So a quick thing. It was earlier this year. It was me, Johnny the Greek from IDP Guys, Josh Raymer from the IDP show, Mike Wohlert from 4 for 4, and John Macri from PFF. We all got together and we did a movie draft. So we kind of incorporated fantasy football with making a movie. So we all made a draft for actors and actresses. And then once we drafted our actors and actresses, we created a movie synopsis and we put it together and we just kind of put it out there and just to have fun in the fantasy community. Mm-hmm. And as I worked with it a little bit, I was like, man, this is kind of fun. And my brain just started going and I came up with an idea for a book and I just started writing. And 344 pages later, I self-published a book.
Wow, man. Congratulations again.
That's amazing. And I struggle to write an article.
To be a writer at all, but
right. That's great, man.
Do you have a link for it in your Twitter bio?
I'll put it in there. I actually just got into the whole LinkedIn bio deal.
Okay.
Somebody asked me on Instagram, like, is it linked in your bio? I was like, No idea, but I'll figure it out.
All right, Gary, where are you?
Actually, besides checking out the tipster page and the start sit charts and the rolling waiver wires for the end season members, I really wanted to take this 1 second to remind everybody to go find Ride or Dynasty on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you comment, rate, and subscribe. Check out JJ and all the great content he's got there. Same thing with everything we got going on over here at Gridiron Ratings. Like, subscribe. Support us a little bit, folks. That's why we enjoy bringing these guys like Matt and Joey, and we know it's doing somebody some good, right?
At least it's doing me
Right?
good, right? The secret
Right?
reason I host this pod.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you to Matt and Joey for coming on tonight. Thank you to Gary for putting together the show. You can find me on Twitter at JJ Wenner. Make sure you are tuning into all of our Gridiron Ratings podcasts. Getting Defensive will be back next Tuesday with Gary, Craig, and the guys from Fantasy and Frames, and Pulling Up a Chair next Wednesday with the Rider Dynasty podcasts. Our special guest, Mauricio Gutierrez and Santiago Casanova. So we're going to have a very good show next week. Remember, your path to the title starts with Gridiron Ratings. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.